So today is story time day, and I don't want to forget, this is actually a collab with Ali Hardy. I'm going to put her link here, I'll put it in the description bar, and I'll mention her again at the end. I rarely ever do collabs, but guys, these are actually really fun. Okay, so the story. I will not go into super detail because the person is, yes, now deceased. That was not clickbait. It really happened, but it's not because of our living situation or anything like that. So I won't go into super detail out of respect. But I remember last year I was like, I'm gonna do this story about this person, but I just felt like talking about it. So let's talk about it. Okay, so last year was a crazy year for me. 2014, 2015, both crazy years. So I had just broken up with my boyfriend and I needed something that day. Like literally I left his ass and I moved out that night. And then like the next day he was calling me to come back. Anyway, I never did. And so I had to find a place. So I moved. I was staying with my mom for like a few days. She's always there for me. She's great. You know, despite our little tiffs that we have sometimes. But I ended up going online that night and I was looking for people, like, you know, rooms to rent. Now, here's the thing. I live in Southeast Texas and I live in like the country part. And there are just never really, first of all, any roommating situations to begin with. A lot of these are like, this is more of a retirement community, I guess you can call it. Or people have just been living here their whole lives, or they live on a farm. Like, there just aren't a lot of places to live. So, like I said, I went online. The best thing to do, I had kind of like not really trusted Craigslist, but I know a lot of people who have found amazing people off of Craigslist. But this town, they don't really use it. There's not even a section for where I live at. Like, you have to drive like 30 minutes, which is fine or whatever. But yeah, so I ended up going online to this roommating like website where you actually, I think you have to pay to put an ad up, I think. So I found like 4 people, which is crazy. They typically just don't have anything like that. I went on there. By the time I got to the first 2, the room had already been taken. So the third person, I called. They said, oh, we're going to be out of town for the next 4 days. We'll be back like on Monday or something like that. I really needed a place, but I was like in not that big of a rush. Like, if it was worth it, I totally would have waited. So while I waited for them, I called the 4th person, and it was a man and like a wife, like a couple. And everything was great. I called him, made an appointment, and I asked my mom if she didn't mind going with me to go look at the place. She agreed. We went over there and he opened the door, and as soon as he opened the door, guys, my mom screamed. She was like, oh my gosh! And then she said the person's name, and I was like, what the hell? And they started talking, and they knew each other from high school. She had actually seen him 6 years ago, but then she saw him again but before those 6 years ago, she hadn't seen him in like 25 years, literally. So I felt safe. I was like, okay, great. You know, they know each other. They were talking, and, you know, he was showing me around the house. He was just explaining a couple things. And, I mean, everything was good. So I thought. So because I was just so ready to, like, go somewhere else, I talked to him. I told him asked him how much it was, how much was he asking for. He took off a little bit of money, actually. And he didn't even require a deposit. He just said it was kind of like a month-to-month thing until things get back on track for the family. I told him that it's totally fine. That's kind of what I'm looking for. It's just a month-to-month thing. And he typically would charge a deposit, but he didn't need that from me. He just was fine. So I asked him if it was okay if I dropped it off to him within the next 3 days, because I'm going to be going out of town myself. And he said, sure. And I said, well, I can drop it off first now and then move in. And he was like, no, take your time. The room is yours. Whatever. So I said, okay, great. I go out of town that night. I'm feeling great because I finally found a place, and it happened like that, and we just so happened to know the person. And I was like, what? And I left, and while I was out of town, he was calling me. He was like, you know, you still moving in, blah, blah. And I'm like, yeah, you told me it was okay if I go out of town. Is it okay? Is everything fine? He said, yeah, I just wanted to make sure. So I said, okay. The next day, he does the same thing. He calls me and he's like, hey, you know, where are you? You're not thinking about backing out, are you? And I'm like, no. Okay, I will be there tomorrow. Click. So I ended up coming back a day early. I called him like first thing I knew and told him, hey, I'm on my way. I have the rent and I'm bringing in some things. Now, while I was out of town, I had all my things with me. I just had like like a tote and like a couple suitcases, just a few things so that if I wanted to move right out, I can just pop everything in my car and keep it moving. So I go there, I move in, give him the rent and everything is fine. You guys, prior to moving in, according to the ad, it said like a non-smoking home, that he had Wi-Fi, cable, everything was fine. You guys, that was all a huge lie. Now, when I first walked in the house, I asked him about the smoke because they had like a faint smoking smell in there. And he said that his wife used to smoke. He said that he does it occasionally, but he'll do it outside. Now, I had told him, I was like, hey, I have another offer that I could go with if you aren't comfortable with like not smoking, because what I wanted, and according to the ad, I told him, I was like, you know, you said no smoking at all. I don't smoke and I don't like the smell of smoke like at all. It makes me sick, it makes me cough, I don't like it, and I don't want it all in my clothes and everything. And he said, no. He totally told me that it was not that, okay? Like I said, guys, everything was a huge lie. I got there, you know, I'm settled in, and I had to go to work that day. I had gotten me a little like pizza job down the street. I had literally done all this stuff in like 1 week. So I get back home from work and I asked him, hey, you know, what's the Wi-Fi password? He said, oh, I don't have Wi-Fi. And I was like, you said you had Wi-Fi. He said, oh, we did. We had internet. And I was like, okay, I have to leave. I'm like, I have to go. Like I literally cannot live without it. Like, it's sad, but that's what I wanted. I was doing YouTube. I needed to upload. I needed to be online. I needed to like email and all that stuff. And there's only so much you can do from your phone that I was even willing to do. And here's the thing with me, like, instead of like paying like a family member to do something or whatever, I would much rather just pay somebody, because like what is due. I don't want a discount ticket, like, especially if I have the money to do it. I don't want to do it that way. Like, just because you're a family member or you're this or that, it's like they always want to like half-ass do stuff and do it on their own time. But it's like, no, I would rather just pay a stranger who I don't know so I can most likely get what I want, and it's not like on their time and it's not discounted, like literally discounted and stuff. So I told him, so I told him that, okay, I'm gonna have to leave. If you don't have Wi-Fi, I would like my money back if you don't mind, and you know, I want to go. He said, no, it's just off. I didn't have the money to pay it, so I'm gonna pay it at the end of the week. I didn't feel comfortable asking him for a discount, but I really just wanted my money back. But I hadn't heard from the other people, and nobody else was posting ads. So I just dealt with it. I was like, okay, you know, it's fine. I ended up going over to my mom's house to use her Wi-Fi during the day, or I would just like go to the McDonald's and use it. There was a McDonald's like literally around the corner, so I was like, okay, I'll just do this for a minute. The end of the week comes, and guys, the cable was off. The cable was off, and the hot water was off. The gas there was no gas, and I was just like, what the hell is going on here? I woke up one morning to brush my teeth, and I was like, oh, okay, well, you know, I turned on a knob, and it just took a while I was thinking, oh, it's just gonna take a while for it to get hot. I turned it got a little warm, so I'm waiting, and then nothing. It was back to cold. So I went in to go take a shower, and the shower was also cold. And I said, hey, is there something going on with the water? It was an older house, but it wasn't that old, you know what I mean? He said, oh, yeah, I didn't have enough money. So I said, can you give back my rent, please? Please, can you give it back to me so I can go somewhere else? You can have a portion of it because I did stay here, but I would like to use this towards someone else. I ended up calling the people that morning. They said that they had already rented it out to somebody, because it was crazy, because it had literally only been 4 days, guys. 4 days. They told me they were out of town the whole time. When I knew everything was happening at one time, they were coming back into town, the water was off, so was the cable, and they said they had already rented it. And I was just like, what? I like the area so much and I like the room. I told them that I could offer them a little bit more, like, then, you know, kind of like a little bit more than what it was. And they were like, you know what, we've already gotten his application and everything, but we do know somebody who's renting a room, and we'll get back to you. And they said it was going to be less than theirs, but it's right around the corner, everything I asked for. So I kind of waited for them to get back to me. So while all that's going on, I was like, okay, something's got to give here. And guys, not only was this happening, he started back smoking. Every single day I would have to wake up and I would smell smoke, and I would have to go in there and tell him, can you please smoke outside? He'd be like, oh, okay, yeah. And then he would do it again, and he would do it, and I have to keep telling him. And when I would go to work and come back, there would be smoke in the house. And then another thing, guys, where was the wife? The wife, I heard of her in the ad, but she was nowhere to be found. So one day I was like, where is your wife? He told me that she passed away 3 weeks prior to me moving in. He said that she had succumbed to her illness, and she also was a smoker, so that made sense. But it was like, why was this never mentioned or anything? And then as soon as he told me about it, that's when all the sadness and the feeling sorry for himself came in. He was like, I'm in debt because of the funeral, her family members stole from me. All this stuff started coming out, and I'm like, I didn't really know what to believe. She honestly had died. There was proof and everything, and she had pictures like in the living room, and it was true. At first I thought it was like a sympathy plea, but no, she had actually died a few weeks before, or maybe even 2 weeks before. They had invoices coming in, obituary, people sending cards, all kinds of things. He claims that the family was stealing from them and everything. So at first I was like, ugh, but then I couldn't help but feel bad. So I said, you know what, I'm going to help this man, and I'm going to work with him on this. So I sat down with him, and we worked out his finances. He claimed that he was making around $3,000 a month from, he didn't work, but he could do like handiwork, and he also was a veteran. He was disabled veteran, or whatever. So he was getting that, and he was getting some other type of public income. And then I found out that he didn't even own the house. He was actually renting it from a person, so he made it seem like he owned the house. He was late on the, and it was like, everything was a big lie, guys. I have never met a bigger liar in my entire life. So I ended up finding out once bill day came around that he was not making the amount he was making. I had moved in like maybe a week and a half before the first. The first came around. I had given him money for that week plus, the first month. And he was not making the amount that he claimed he was making, okay? Actually, he was only getting maybe like half of that, like less than half, maybe $1,200 a month, maybe, and his bills were his bills were a lot less than that. But because he had gone to pawn shops, he drank a lot, he smoked a whole lot, and he was just buying like wasteful food, and he was just wasteful, and he spent money on really dumb things. He couldn't make ends meet. So I took it into my hands, because I was like, you know what, they have not called me back on that place. I don't have time to keep looking for a place. I have work. I'm still doing YouTube and just all kinds of other things that I had going on. I'm just going to work with this man while I'm here. The room had great lighting. I loved it. It was big. It was spacious. It was already furnished. The other room wasn't even offering it to be furnished and stuff, so I would have had to bring in other things. So I took all of that into consideration when I was thinking about leaving. So we sat down, worked everything out. I called all the people, and then he called, and he had got like a small loan, and I felt like he was really, really trying. But then the next morning, after we figured out the bills, it was around 7 o'clock in the morning, and I heard a boom, 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 bang, 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 like loud knocking. I was like, what the hell is that? My room was very close to the front door, so I heard it. He didn't hear it. I went to the window. I see a guy peeking through the peephole, looking up, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I walk back to the other room, and I tell him, hey, there's a man here, and he's knocking very loud. He couldn't hear it. He comes outside, and the guy is asking for rent. So apparently he hadn't paid the month before I had even got their rent, that month's rent, or this month's rent, and it was due. He was like, look, we're gonna have to evict you if you don't pay this and this amount. So he was like, yeah, he was kind of blowing him off. The guy comes back the next morning with his wife. The wife is the one who's really, really adamant about him getting the money. So he's like, where's the rent? And so I'm like, what the hell? Like, you didn't pay the rent? And he lied. Once again, guys, he was lying. He made it seem like he was doing me a favor, like he had everything under control. Like it was just the hottest mess. So it had gotten so bad that I had to talk to the rent guy, and I asked him, how much was due. And because he was on public housing, and they were supposed to be paying his portion of the rent, so the guy had empathy on him, and he was like, "Oh, it was gonna kick in this day or this day or that day," and yeah. So I didn't know any of this. Like honestly, I couldn't believe all this was happening to me. So due to the stress and everything that was going on, he started smoking even more. He would wake up just smoking in his room, and me and him, we started getting into big arguments. And even with the arguments, he started writing me love letters. I would wake up and he would slide a letter under my door. He had like picked a rose up and he had put it in my room. And he was just doing all kinds of stuff, and I was not interested in him, not one bit. Not one bit, believe me. And like the first letter said, I'm so glad that you came into my life. I really needed somebody like you. I'm so lonely. Then it started getting even more graphic. He was like, if I could just touch you, that would really just make me happy. And I was just like, oh. So I asked him about the letter, and he did not want to talk about it. He was just like, oh, don't pay that any mind. I just want to make you feel comfortable, and I wanted you to know. And I said, okay, listen, this is not more than, and he wouldn't let me finish. He was like, no, I get it. Next day he comes back and he has his wife's old ring. And I'm like, no, like what? I don't want it. So then his letters started becoming threatening. He started like every time I had to leave the house to go to work, he would be like, I would appreciate it if you let me know you were leaving. So I would leave the house. I would let him know, because I was really not trying to shake it up anymore. I just really was ready to leave. So I actually started doing it. Every time I would leave the house, I would let him know, hey, I'm leaving. He would always walk me out. He would put the garage up, because he insisted on me parking in the garage. It was not an automatic door, so he would have to pull it up and he would put it down when I was leaving. Then when I came home from work, I would have to call him, let him know I'm on the way. Now I started spending even less and less time at the house because my God, guys, it doesn't end. It really doesn't. One day I come home and there's a girl in the living room. Now it was no stranger, because he always had people over. One thing I forgot to mention to you guys, because there's just so much going on, is that he started partying like a week into I was living there. At night, every day I would come home and the music would be just blasting. It would be like boom, da, no, it had like all kinds of music. One of his friends was Hispanic, so they had that reggaeton, like Latino music playing at night, and it would be boom, 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 and it was like, oh my gosh. And he had that pawn shop stereo, like just blasting. The house was really, really long, and even when the den was like closed off, I could still hear it. And that, like, the house was old, so it would be like kind of like shaking a little bit because it was so loud. And it would go on for hours, and then they would be smoking. It was just trashy, and I just couldn't believe it. I was like, this is just not even worth it. I don't even care anymore. This was my last straw, though. The girl is sitting in the living room, and I'm like, hi. He wants me to meet her. And he leaves, and I'm just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I have to go to work soon. She starts telling me about herself. She claims that she knew him for a long, long time, and that they're just not getting back to know each other. And I was like, she looked a lot younger than him. She claimed that she was pregnant with twins, and that she already had like 6 kids already, and she was going to have number 8, and that she was just taking it easy because, twins are high risk. You guys, this girl is pregnant, but she's smoking while she's speaking to me. I told her, can you put that cigarette out? Like, can you put it out right now? Because I don't like that in my face, and we're not supposed to smoke in the house. And she was like, okay. She put it out. And I'm getting ready to leave to go back to my room. And she's kind of like following me into the kitchen. And she starts talking about how she's married and how she may be getting a divorce soon because she found out her husband was cheating on her. And she was just a big liar. Anyway, come to find out, she had just like freshly gotten out of prison. There was nothing fresh about her. She had no shoes on. And she was just dirty. Her feet were dirty. She was dirty looking. Like she was wearing like a big ass scarf around her entire body. She just looked nasty. Hair was greasy. And I was like, I asked her, I said, who is this? And I said, is she going to be living here? He said, no. I already knew she was going to be living here. So I was already planning my escape. And I was like, okay, so how long is she gonna be here? He said, she's not moving in. You guys, she was moving in, okay? She didn't really have much. She had like a bag and maybe some sandals and some cigarettes and beer, and that was it. That was all her diet was. I stopped buying food because I would come home and she had eaten it, and I would be like, are you gonna replace this? And she would say, yeah, and he would go and he would replace it sometimes. And then I worked at a pizza place, so I was always just eating at the pizza place, and this is when my weight gain really started back because I hated being home. I was eating pizza at work, and I would just go to McDonald's, drink a soda, and like literally sit there, edit, and then upload somewhere else or whatever. So they would get into like the most stupid like fights I have ever seen in my life. One day I came home, and this was like my last week staying there, guys. I only stayed there for maybe about 3.5 weeks. One of the last straws, two of the last straws was this. Like, for instance, she had taken one of his rings and it was in her purse. He found it in her purse, and it was actually his wife's old ring, and it had an initial on it. He started yelling at her like, don't take my stuff, and she was saying, I thought it was my son's because it had one of his initials on it. Like, we knew she was stealing. The girl was also stealing, guys. And so it was just a whole bunch of mess. Now, the last straw was also, you know, obviously they were arguing. He was smoking and drinking more. He couldn't control his money. Like, things were just getting shut off left and right. I had finally gotten the lights, and the lights were cut off for like a couple hours. I got them back on. You know, we went up there, we talked to them and worked out a plan and gave them a little bit of money, and it was fine. Then the cable was just gonna have to go. We had it was a gas house, so the stove didn't work and neither did the hot water. So I was just like taking showers over at my mom's house. I mean, I was pretty much there a lot. One of the last straws was this. One day I get home from work and he's like, hey, you know, I wrote you a letter, you should go check it out. And I was like, great, another letter. I look at it, and this one is like a threatening romantic letter. He gonna tell me, you know, I love you, I really wish we could be together, something like that. And I was just like, ew, no, you are fucking some pregnant trashy girl and I don't want you anyway. And he says, but, you know, I feel like we're not, you know, getting connected. We can really connect if we really connect. And I was like, ew. He gonna tell me that, you know, I'll let you know when you can leave. He gonna tell me that after all I've done. I went and I called my aunt, because my aunt had actually been coming over, like, she would come over like a few times a week. This is the most that she'd ever been in our city. She would come over like a lot, and she would just be hanging out with him because they were also classmates. Her and my mom and him, they were all classmates, and he was a really great person back then. So it's hard for her to, you know, recognize him as what he is now. He's like, he ain't gonna do my baby like that. She comes over, she's reading the letters on the porch. He comes outside and he immediately starts getting really defensive because he's embarrassed. And so he starts yelling. One part in the letter that really got it was when he was pretty much telling me that in order to pay my way, like, I had already paid him rent, but because he was months behind on his bills, he was like, you know, I'm gonna need more out of you. And he wanted some cat. He wanted cat for bills that he did not pay. That is just so ridiculous. So my aunt was asking about it. Anyway, he got defensive. He tried to get loud, and I had to get even louder. I was like, blah, 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 blah. I was like, fuck you, okay? You're a piece of shit. And I threw one of his glasses on the floor. He made me so mad. And guys, he never bothered me about that again. He didn't write no more letters. He actually was acting right for a few days. And by that point, I was already moving out. I was already moving myself. He would sleep way into the afternoon, and then he would go outside in the back and smoke. So I had the entire front of my house to move. I packed everything up. You know, I packed it on top of each other, moved things around in my trunk, and everything only took one trip. And he started to get a little bit restless. So I called my mom and I was like, hey, if you're gonna come get your microwave, this would be a good time to come get it. She goes inside. She hadn't seen him in a couple weeks, and you know, she starts getting her microwave together. Everything happened so quickly. My mom comes running outside saying, like, holding the microwave. She's like, he's trying to take my microwave. He's trying to take my microwave. And I was like, what the hell? And he's following behind her. Yeah, pretty much he had told her that, like, you can't take your microwave because I'm gonna need to pawn it for money. For money. A $60 microwave. Like, what? What? So anyway, that's when she came out running and saying that he's trying to take it. And so she goes and she puts it in the back seat, and then she's like, listen, I'm not trying to. And so they're talking. I get the rest of my stuff, and me and her, we literally drive off at the same time. I drive off to the nearest parking lot, and I'm talking to Domino's because they ended up calling me from the other one. You see, I had applied at a Domino's in Austin like about a week before. And they called me back, and I got an interview. So I scheduled it for that day. They said, do you want today, tomorrow, blah, blah, you know, and I scheduled it for that day. I stopped working at my other one, and I literally, guys, I just drove that day, the 4-hour ride straight to Austin. I left that afternoon. I got there around 4. I put a few of my stuff into my new roommate's house, who just so happened to be the last roommate I've had, who was crazy. You guys saw the vlogs where I was talking about how crazy she was and stuff. So yeah, and that was it. I ended up moving into her place that day and putting my stuff upstairs, and I did not hear from him again. Now, fast forward to last month. I'm hanging out and I get a call, and it's his sister, and I was like, oh, you know, I don't even know how she got my number, which is crazy. But I was listed under the loan because he couldn't keep a phone. So you know, I put my name under there. I mean, I put my number, not my name, not my social security, nothing like that, just so that they could have a contact and I could go see him and let him know whenever it was. Yeah, he had a little burner phone, and he would constantly have to put minutes on it, and it just never stayed. So yeah, and the phone got cut off, also the house phone, the week I moved in. So she called me and she said, you know, he died. And I said, what? I was like, what? And I said, how? She said, somebody shot him. And lo and behold, that night, the news, you know, I told my mom, and she was shocked. I was watching the news, and you know, they were talking about it and everything, and I just couldn't believe it. I went online and I was like, is that him? And there was his name sprawled across it. It even showed the shooter, who the man was. Apparently he had started dating this woman, and she had been married years before. She had been divorced also years before. The guy who she divorced was extremely jealous, and he could not get over it. And one day he went to her house, and you know, my ex-roommate, he hid in the closet because he knows how crazy he is, and it was for something, and I don't even remember how it happened, but he shot him while he was in the closet, in the chest, and I think in the head also. And anyway, he ended up telling the news people he was in jail. You know, they put him in jail that, like, the next day after they found him. And he said it was in self-defense. The kind of gun he had, all that stuff, it was not self-defense. Like, it wasn't. Like, my ex-roommate, he was shell-shocked because he was in the war. But he didn't just go around carrying a gun. Anybody that knew him knew he was a really friendly guy, and he didn't really do much like that. It wasn't really like that. He was just in a bad situation, and he didn't know how to deal with it, honestly. So I'm not saying that he was all bad, but it's like, come on. He was not trying to kill nobody. Like, so anyway, the guy who killed him is in jail right now. He's pending a court date and everything like that, and this just freshly happened last month. So yeah, I mean, it's sad that all of this happened like this, and I mean, I always send over my condolences. It was really, really sad, and it sucks because he had like grandchildren, but the good thing is that now he can be up there with his wife, who he was mourning over, you know, while I was there. So yeah, guys, that was my story. I know it sounds crazy and there's like a lot going on, and I hate that these videos are always so long, but oh well, oh well. So yeah, guys, don't forget to check out Ali Hardy's channel. I'm gonna link it right here. It's in the description bar too. She has a great story time. I loved collaborating with her, and yeah, until next time, guys, I'll see ya. Bye.